All right. Good evening.
Good evening.
Get used to an Indian accent from Australia. I just feel absolutely honored that in a very short span of I would say a couple of months that I have been in this wonderful city called Sarasota, which I did not know a few years back existed. And about 2 years back, I came across Sarasota in a very fortuitous, interesting way, which I'll tell you as we proceed. But yeah, as Bill introduced me, he mentioned that I am with University of South Florida, which is a big honor for me. And Sarasota Manatee campus is the best campus, of course, in the world, irrespective of the fact that 41 flows almost through the campus. And we are celebrating our 40th year, Sarasota Manatee. And so there are a few of my colleagues, and my dean Jim Curran is here, and a few of us are wearing our 40th year badge. So we are celebrating that in many ways than one. And I just thought I'll point that out to you as well. And in what I'm going to share with you today, it's a combination of a fair bit of consulting work, a fair bit of research work, including a PhD that completed about 4 years back. And I have been supervising, I have supervised 7 PhDs, and this was the 5th one that I completed successfully. And then eventually I put all of that together in a book form, and I'll share with you about that as well. This presentation is available in PDF form for any one of you. All it needs is an email, or I'll send it to Bill and he can send the email blast out with the PDF. So, yes. You asked me to introduce myself, so but I'm not looking for a job. But no, this is what I have done in, I would say, past 3 decades, and that includes right now very proudly a part of USF, but I've been a part of Method Science, which is my own consulting company, and we have operated out of Sydney, Australia for, I would say, about 15 years, and we have been into the 3 or 4 core areas such as Agile, business analysis. So I have completed my CBAP, which was kind of interesting because in September 2013 I was appearing for my CBAP exam, and my son Keshav was appearing for his HSC, higher secondary, and I thought I was studying more than he was. But that's because I was afraid more of failing rather than he was. Yeah, here is my book. I'll talk about that a little bit more as well. And then there are a few interesting things, awards that have happened. But one of the key or well-known or well-recognized membership is being elected to the fellowship grade of the Australian Computer Society, and that is by election, and ACS is the flagship body that even advises the government on how computing and IT should be happening. So when this fellowship happened, I was not sure what I was getting, but in retrospect I thought I got something immensely valuable. And for a long time I was the baby of the group, because all my fellows were quite senior to me. Now this book and the prize, I have put here particularly for my friend Andy Lyman, who is sitting over here, because he has gone on Amazon and found that my books are selling for 59 cents.
A signed copy now.
And now he's got a signed copy. And he has been threatening to buy a few of them. So I thought, no, hang on, it can't be that bad. And although this is Australian dollar, even Australian dollar can't be that bad. So I got a couple of. Now this is the book I believe sells at 59 cents. This is the book I wrote with Brian Henderson Cellars, my PhD supervisor, in year 2000 or 2001. And it's all about object-oriented process, environment, and notation, open. So this was like my mega introduction into UML and software modeling. And then these two books, again, they don't sell that cheap, Andy, sorry. But this is on practical object-oriented analysis. So what a business analyst does in terms of capturing requirements with use cases and activity graphs and so on. And this is the one that deals with the nitty-gritty of design. So problem space and solution space. And then this is this book. So the reason I've got a couple of copies to show off here as well, and if you want to buy them, I'm prepared to make a loss, but I won't sell it at a loss to this young man.
$2.
No. The reason I am telling a story around this book is it is published in Jan 2013, but around 2012. A fine person wrote the foreword to this book, recommended by another fine person. And Adriana in Austin recommended that Steve Blias should write the foreword to this book. And I said, absolutely fine. And Steve Blias wrote the foreword to this book. And then a couple of years back, I was touring through this wonderful place called Sarasota with my family. And Professor Anurag sitting here, I gave him a copy of the book and he looked at the foreword, went to the foreword. It is signed Steve Blias, Sarasota. So, serendipity is this book. With that self-promotion, no, actually a little bit more. Yesterday I received this Cutter executive report. It is titled, as you can see, Psychology of Agile, and it's part 2 of the report. I wrote the first one on individuals and teamworks, and this is on adopting Agile in organizations. And we were having a bit of a chat, Michael and Ron, and over the table, over the dinner, that to make Agile successful, we need something more than just Scrum and just writing good user stories and having a daily stand-up. So a fair bit of exploration. Now here is the deal, and if you buy the book at full price, I'll give this for free.
US dollars or Australian?
I'm ready to go with Aussie dollars. By the way, Leela, you can turn around, otherwise you'll sprain your back. Please. So this is a more of a rhetorical question. We all know what is Agile, but still the key reason I have put it here is because it means different things to different people. And the starting point is well known, but I have taken Agile into the business space. I have taken Agile beyond software development, and I'm very keen to take that particular angle before I present what I call Composite Agile or CAMS. So again, if we go into a bit of history of methods and modeling, very, very brief, then this is sort of my view on methods. And you can probably relate to, say, the flowcharts, came in about 70s. And before that, I'm told creating any model was considered below dignity. In fact, even in 1970s and early 80s, if someone was drawing a flow chart, like I was trying to draw a flow chart, and my super programmer colleagues were laughing at me saying, you need to draw a flow chart before coding a 3000 line COBOL program. So modeling was not given the same importance that we give it today. And if we look at it, this was the age of objects, components and services, mobile and cloud, and now all my research energies are focused on big data. So perhaps sometimes next year, if we still need a local speaker, I will be available on big data and projects and project management. So that's the way it has progressed so far in terms of modeling and processes. And there is of course a lot, and I'll show you some of that methods world as we progress. But if someone was asked to summarize what is Agile, and I've done that many times. We have run 2 days, 3 days, 5 full days of training programs in some of the banks in Australia, a couple of companies in India, in Malaysia and so on. And we start with this key question: what is Agile? What people think Agile is? And without asking you to answer, I would say the one key word, and it's a common sense word, that describes Agile is iterations. Everything we do in an iterative and incremental manner. And to me, that's not a new innovation at all. All good project managers know that to make a project successful, you can't spend 3 months planning, 6 months developing and 3 months testing, which is the stock standard waterfall life cycle. So this particular slide very nicely highlights what is Agile. It is not a full description of Agile, it is just the core of Agile, and that is iteration. We want to try out a few things, but we want to try them fast. And if we are going to fail during that process, that is much better than failing after we have done an year or two of development. And this is the same concept now that this is a PMI chapter meeting, branch meeting, is it? So it is worth mentioning the 5 key phases in PMBOK as they are outlined. And then someone like Jim Highsmith, who has done a fair bit of work in Agile, has come up with a life cycle, as he calls it, which is more around these words. And what I think he is doing is extending iterations into something that is very, very practical. So with an Agile project, I will be writing my hello world on day 1. And in a typical planned waterfall life cycle project, the hello world will not be written until someone has signed off on the requirements. And this signing off is a big game, in my opinion, because many times it means nothing. And I mean, we are all the time, one of the learning things for me in Sarasota, in the US, as I'm living here, is the whole exercise around coupons. I went to Best Buy and I'm given coupons and I have to register. And I went to CVS and I have to register. And I went to anywhere, even with Andy, I have to register.
Yeah.
And then there are these huge terms and conditions which I tried to read and went off to sleep. Like Nancy, you are a legal person, right? So when a key business stakeholder signs on requirements, it really doesn't mean much. That has been my experience. And we can always say that you signed on it, but if someone has to read 300 to 500 pages and sign on the requirements, if I am on the other side, if I am a stakeholder, I'll say, I want the project to start, I'm signing. But you can't hold me legally responsible because we are together developing this piece of software solution. What will be helpful is if you show me something that you are planning to develop or that you understand as my requirements. And once you show it to me, it will give me enough idea as to what I want, and I'll give that feedback to you, and that is how we will develop this solution. So these words, envisioning, speculating, exploring, adapting, and closing, are the words that Jim Highsmith has used in order to highlight his view on Agile, and I think these are valuable words. So in here, these words or groups of words in the past few years have been treated as one against the other. Even and we'll have a look at the Agile manifesto, and again I find there that it is something over something else. What I'm finding, or what I did find when we did our research aspect of Composite Agile, is that it is impossible to give up something like this, and there is no need to give up something like this. If we look at pure Agile, as in Scrum and extreme programming, which is Ken Beck's brainchild, we find that the formality of these processes is not there. So if we look at, these are basically the same 5 groups that I mentioned, and all the PMBOK gurus in this room know this inside out, but it's giving importance, or you can see here that as the project progresses, different aspects of the process groups are given importance. And what Agile is saying is that this needs to iterate, but in pure Agile they are not cross-referencing this. In my approach, Composite Agile, I had made sure that these particular, the whole of PMBOK in fact gets cross-referenced, and again I'll show you where and how. So this is our well-known Agile manifesto. Is there anyone here who has not come across the Agile manifesto before this? We can talk about it later. So to answer, to help Anurag briefly, these 20-odd methodologists, gurus, went on a skiing holiday and published a paper in which they do talk about their skiing holiday and how they thought about the Agile manifesto, the new paradigm of developing software. So in fact, I have stopped using the word software and I use the word solutions, because actually it goes beyond software. But they gave these 4 almost biblical statements around Agile. Individuals and interactions will be given more precedence than processes and tools. Working software, and again I have replaced this with solution, over documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following the plan. And at this time, I usually, in my industrial training, I talk about even following a plan, and there is a very popular statement by the past American President Eisenhower, which I came across after I read a couple of articles on Agile. And his statement was, I will do all the planning I can. When the first bullet is fired in a war, I will throw away the plans, but keep the planning. And I guess what he is hinting at is we need to do a fairly extensive PMBOK style planning, even if we are doing Agile. And I sort of value that, because when I am executing a project, I may not be able to follow the plan, but that doesn't mean that my planning exercise has gone waste. And the psychology of Agile, in which I have highlighted this human tendency, that if I have a group of sentences like this, I will only take the left hand side and sort of push the right hand side completely out. So I have walked into projects where there is no documentation whatsoever, and I said, where is the modeling, where are the processes? And I was told, oh, we are super agile. And that is not what the gurus were trying to say. And these are some of them. So Ken Beck, Mike Beadle, Ken Schwaber, the gurus of Scrum, and then a few others. Martin Fowler is there as well. So before I even take you into Composite, Agile method and strategy, CAMS, which is what I have called my take on Agile, here is one contribution that CAMS makes to the Agile literature. Agile is made up of these 12 principles derived from the manifesto, and I have grouped them into these 4 groups, and that's what appears in the book as well. So customers, if we look at these carefully, I don't think any of these are rocket science, and I don't see how a project manager can say, I am agile so I need them, and another project manager can say, I'm not agile so I don't need them. The way I'm seeing it, no matter whether you are agile or not, you need these 12. What Agile has done is highlighted them, have brought them out in the open and formalized them. And what I have done is group them so customer satisfaction, collaboration and face-to-face conversation. Agile teams are supposed to be cross-functional, which means if I have a group of developers, business analysts, testers, I will not put all the developers in one area, all the BAs in another, and the testers in third, and each will have a leader. One is a lead BA, another is a test manager, and third is a development manager. That is not what Agile is saying. Agile is saying the teams need to be cross-functional. That means they need to be made up of different roles, including a banker or a travel expert, end user basically, key end user. If you look at developer-centric, a Scrum Master, which I actually don't like as a term. I prefer an Agile coach, because Scrum Master, I don't know, somehow I feel, I'm the master and you are all my slaves. And, not that anyone has told me that, but I find Agile is so much ownership based that the whole team owns the project and the whole team is responsible for it, that the need to manage is minimal, and leadership rather than task management plays a more crucial role in Agile. And I will share with you some of my practical experiences of consulting and training as well, where we actually put in extra effort to get the managers understand that it's about leadership rather than task management. So again, I'll tell you a bit more about that. The only reason I thought we were resisting change is because we have drawn up a plan and we are driven by the iron triangle of project management: time and cost and functionality. And the end user, the stakeholder, is saying, I give you $10 million, Bhuvan, and don't come and talk to me for next 10 months, and after that you deliver the project to me. And in between, I might send someone who will say, by the way, the value added tax has changed from 10 to 12%, and Australia we have got goods and service tax, GST, and so on. We will not allow the change because I am responsible to deliver that particular project. If the stakeholder who has put the $10 million is responsible for the project, the problem of task management doesn't exist. I'm aware I'm talking concepts here, but I'm also a practitioner and we will balance it out. But if the person who is making the change has to take the consequences of making the change. Then that person can make as many changes as they want, which was not happening in traditional project management. And then there are a few other interesting things like simplicity in design, and I have heard Brady Booch talk about it, saying that the most complex systems in this world actually start off as simple systems. And you cannot start designing a system as a complex system. It has to be designed as a block diagram is a pretty good starting point, and then it will eventually evolve into a complex system. Now, we were talking on this table about American football, and believe me, I still need to understand Australian football. My son is coaching me on that. I only understand one game. I'll mention its name. It's called cricket. And the only way to describe its character is that it's one game where two nations play for 5 days and the game ends in a draw. And I didn't say 5 hours, I said 5 days. So we'll not talk about
tea
it.
breaks.
There were tea breaks, lunch breaks, and oh, it's charming, you know. Okay. I don't want to take off in that direction because I'll then use up my time quite unwisely. So, when Ken Schwaber and Mike Beadle presented Scrum in Austin, Texas in 1995, I was in that conference, but I was not interested. I was masquerading as a PhD student. I was actually a product development manager in Dow Jones, but Brian and Henderson Sellers had told me, you better make sure you come there as a student, otherwise you will be paying $3,000 registration fees. So I went there and I listened to all the wonderful talks on object-oriented modeling. At that time, UML was unified method and about to be launched. So Booch, Rambag, and Eva Jacobson, the three amigos, they declared unified method in that conference. But Mike and Ken were presenting Scrum first then, and around 2001 is when Scrum really took off. And now, you've got Scrum Master courses and certifications, and every time we talk about Agile, it is Scrum, which is like Cadbury and chocolate. And I tell everyone, look, there are other kinds of chocolates too, although we tend to call them other kinds of Cadbury. So this particular method has become popular, and I have no issues with that. I'm happy that Scrum has come into being because it has brought such an interesting way of looking at developing a solution. So one of the key things is that it's a feature-based development. Secondly, we try and produce something that works. So even in a retrospective in Scrum, which is basically a sitting together and showcasing, sorry, not retrospective, showcasing a product, you are not allowed to show PowerPoint slides. You are actually supposed to show an executable, which is very, very interesting. So it's feature based. These are the only 3 official key roles in Scrum, and then of course it is highly iterative, and we release the features. And you know how we write requirements, and these appear to be so flaky that sometimes people wonder how a real life project gets done with this, but it does get done with this. There are a few caveats around it, but these are user stories, and the guru is Mike Cohn, and some of his, at least a couple of his YouTube videos are excellent. And in fact, I'm right now teaching program design in IT in USF, and I've given links to a couple of these videos to my students. Obviously, we want them to use UML for good software modeling, but any new project that my students will walk in, they will have to face Agile, and if they don't, then I will encourage them to bring in Agile, and the requirements are written like this. So about 2011-12, we had a business analyst world. It was a conference series that was going on, and I was there quite a few times, and we were talking about requirements, and someone asked, how can a requirement be this brief? And a very nice answer given was that this is the lid on top of a box. This is just a cover on top of a box. So what is the box? Is that a massive amount of documentation and requirements? And the answer is no. That is the conversation. And again, I remember Ken Beck giving his fascinating keynote in Tools Conference, Technology of OO Languages and Systems. It was in Santa Barbara, around 2000, 2001. And he talked for about 90 minutes, and he was using 3 slides, and I mean slides, like overhead projector. And on one of them was mention of Frederick Taylor. Now, who was Fred Taylor? He was the guy responsible for WBS, work breakdown structure, the starting point for Prince2 or PMBOK or any of the formal life cycle. And Ken Beck was arguing that that is the paradigm we have followed in developing software projects. It's a very funny story. You know, the railway train gauge in America and in India and in UK and in Australia. What's the width of the gauge? It's 4 feet, 8.5 inches. Now, I'm not trying to impress you, because I learned this after telling this story a few times, that it is 4 feet, 8.5 inches. Apart from the fact that my dad, late dad, was a railway station master, I didn't know it was 4 feet and 8.5 inches. So why is the gauge 4 feet and 8.5 inches? Because, any guesses? Yes?
Roman chariots.
Roman chariot.
That way.
And the jigs and tools that were used to build the Roman chariots were the same tools that were used to build the railroad, the wagons in UK, and the railroad in UK, which was the extension of the wagon width. And then the story, from there we had it here in America, and the story then goes in the other direction, the upward direction, that a company in Utah somewhere, forgive my pronunciation, builds the space rocket boosters, SRBs, I'm told, which are on the sides of the rocket in Cape Canaveral when the rocket goes up. I do plan to visit that place. And the engineers who designed those SRBs would have preferred them to be wider than what they were. But they couldn't, because the boosters had to travel through a tunnel in a train which was 4 feet 8.5 inches wide. And so basically the man on the moon and that mission on the moon is affected by the Roman chariot. So now the final question, why was the Roman chariot's width 4 feet 8.5 inches?
Correlated to the width of the horses used.
The width of the backside of 2 horses.
Yes.
I'm not using any rude word, but that's what the story is. That the most sensible distance between the backsides of 2 horses was the width of the axle, affecting the man on the moon. So let's translate that. Data sheets, right? Some of us, and the ladies will disagree, but some of us know there were punch cards, right? We don't want to give away your age. And the deck of cards used to occasionally fall down, and then if you scramble them, the whole kobold was kaput, you know. From that 72 characters and so on, we are going into the big data age. And when we talk about methods and processes, the methods and processes, I showed you flowcharts, SSADM, structured system analysis and design method, right through to OO and UML, and then now the age of Agile. So some of this actually used to happen in my wonderful book, which is on sale. I have done the report. I have started my preface by saying that when I wrote my first few payroll applications in a Tata company in India, telco, in 1982-83. I had a user. He would come every morning, and the world didn't have the concept of passive smoking, so he used to smoke, and I used to think it's not hurting me, he's smoking, but he would smoke and sit with me and say, "Hi Bhuvan, how are you going? Let's have a cup of chai." And look, and then he would take a pen and he would open up the cigarette case, and then he would start scribbling on it, not even the back of an envelope, on the back of a cigarette case, his requirements for how many sorts he wants on this payroll, these grades, subgrades, qualification, whatever he wanted. And I would go into the terminal room where we had green screen Burroughs terminals with only 2 pages worth of memory, and I would type up the code that he wanted or make changes to the program. Then I would compile and build and execute the code, and then the printer was those, no, not dot matrix, the chain printers, not even the chain, the 172 character, huge printouts with holes on the side. So the printout would be about 100 feet away in the printer room. Go there, get it, bring it back, show it to my user. The user would have a look at it, would smile, half a smile, yes, it's looking good, but I want one more sort, please. And I would say, okay, if you want one more sort, it'll take you, an hour. Go back to green screen, change it, compile, build, print, go there, get it, give it to the user, big smile, even a pat on my back. He was very senior to me. And then he would come back the next day for more requirements. Guess what it was? Agile. It is agile. It has collaboration, face-to-face conversation, communication, change, minimal documentation, execution, and all the good things that Agile stands for, including user stories. These are very nicely written on 3x5 inch cards. If you go and buy them as 3x5 inch cards in Staples, they are cheap. If you go and buy them as user story cards in a conference, they are very costly. But what was wrong on the back of a cigarette case apart from smoking? Nothing. That was the documentation, but it was super agile, but not in a negative sense. And then visibility. One more key word that I will stress in Agile is everything is visible. And with one of my clients, and I am going to talk about them, Rabobank. Rabo is a Dutch bank with a large presence in Australia and New Zealand because of the agricultural driven economy of Australia and New Zealand. And Rabo is the agricultural bank. And I've been doing some work with them almost a couple of years now. And we have put together Rabobank's Agile framework. And I asked my client, my stakeholders to come up with the keywords that they think are important. And one of them is visibility. Everything is on a wall, which is great, but practical challenges, they are also having, activity-based working, something like that, which is hot desks for thousands of people. So, you know how when we set up our little office and our little desk, I'll have a picture of my wife, if I am recently married. If I am at my age, I'll have a picture of my son or my daughter. If I grow up further, I'll have a picture of my grandson or granddaughter, and then I'll have a sports picture and all kind of things. Now in activity-based working, you set all of that up in the morning at 9 a.m. and then by 5 p.m. you collect the picture of your wife or daughter or whosoever you love and get it all in a bag and put it in a locker, and next day morning you don't know where you're going to sit. Now that is very interesting, and of course I can see the reason, because in general 10 to 30% of desks in a typical working environment are unoccupied, because people are on the ground, they are making client calls, they are going and fixing things, they are on vacation, whatever it is. Now in such a situation, having a dedicated wall is very difficult. The second challenge, we are moving in an electronic age, of course, and although the Agile manifesto says individuals and interactions over processes and tools. But there are many tools in the agile world, case tools. And Rational has put, or IBM Rational has put their own tool, and Microsoft has got their own tool, various tools. And these tools will draw the stories, help you draw the stories and change their colors as we move the stories on the wall. So then the wall will become like this TV over here, like this screen over here. And then there will be 10 such screens. So that's another very interesting offshoot of Agile. And then when it becomes a outsourced project, then a completely new dimension emerges. So I have only another 15 minutes, right? I'm given 1 hour, 7 to 8. So I think you will have to invite me again. I have so many things to tell. So what is the best, as far as I'm concerned, and the most balanced approach to Agile? And I have called it Composite Agile, and I have also called it Method and Strategy. And I have come up with various practical techniques to help my clients, my people pick up Agile. And one of the things that I had done, I said, and I have actually tried to get these gurus to respond to my email queries, saying, you went on this skiing holiday and you developed this wonderful thing called Agile. My question to you is, did you use Agile to develop Agile? Or did you use a planned approach to develop Agile? Or you did not use any approach to develop Agile? I want to know. And I'm sure all of us want to know. Because if you develop Agile using Agile, you already had Agile. And that becomes very philosophical. What I have done, these job aids, I said to my clients, and if you look at PMBOK, the sister production of PMBOK, it has got some 40 odd techniques, in fact even more, business analysis techniques, and quite a few of them are Agile techniques. And if we start Agile adoption in a company like Rabobank or Westpac, which is one of our 4 large banks in Australia, it becomes overwhelming. Where do I start? Do I start with stories, or do I start with this, or do I start with planning and budgeting about Agile, or do I start delivering training, start coaching my people and so on? So I have shortlisted 13 Agile techniques, and I've called them job aids. And in reality, the job aids appear like this. And you're welcome to have a look at them. And I have a few of them, but they are stuck in LA in customs. My sea freight is coming, but I'm very happy to share them with you. And these, so I divided them pre-iteration, during the iteration, and post-iteration. And these are the techniques. And again, I asked my participants to pick up 3 or 4 of them and start learning them. So stories, user personas, estimation, prioritization, Moscow technique, must have, should have, could have, won't have, backlog management, daily stand-up, and so on. Then for my BA work, which I do fair bit as well, I have created 13 business analysis deck of cards. And you can see where this is going. I mentioned the word deck of cards because 13 for UML and design, and 13 for quality assurance and testing. And then I will publish my plain deck of cards and I'll sell you the first one, no concession. I also have for each of these an extremely boring amateur video by me. So I give it out for free. I'll give it out to you. It has 2 uses. You can pick up formally and quickly what are these techniques. And I'll talk for about 3 or 4 minutes in each of them. And secondly, at around 11 o'clock tonight, if you don't get to sleep, you put it on, and within 2 or 3 minutes, it's guaranteed. It works with me also, so it will work with you. Okay, so a bit of research background to this, and I told you there was one PhD that was entirely focused on this. And again, I have called it composite agile, then I have said it is not just a method, but it is an overall strategic approach which is not limited to software development. A business can be agile and a business should be agile, and perhaps that is the key agility, rather than a software development team alone being agile. So I have called it CAMS. And Barry Beam is worth quoting in any process and software area. Although many of their advocates consider the agile and plant-driven software development methods opposites, synthesizing the two can provide developers with a very, very good option. And look at this, 2002, we are in 2015, it has come a long way. People have accepted this. Very nice blog as well, that again I won't read it out, but it is pushing for the same argument. And so I started arguing 2010, around that 2010-11, when the PhD was heating up, that there is a need to research into how we can function in a balanced manner. And the manifesto was shifting us from one side to the other. So there is a need to get the balance right, because in practice there are situations like legislative and compliance requirements, time and budget. You can't really, in all honesty, I cannot and have never approached a stakeholder saying, you give me $10 million, but I won't tell you when I will finish, what I will deliver, and what will be its quality. I won't tell you that because I am agile. That is stupidity. So I have not done that yet. So CAMS combines the radical aspect of agile with the traditional project management. It also considers all other methods. So another area of work that I'm doing is in the area of method friction, and I have another report published like this, avoiding method friction, where I have looked at and investigated how an organization has multiple methods and they have friction with each other. I'll show that to you as well very quickly. So if you look at this word over, all of these actually are very key requirements in an outsourced project. Take any outsourced project, and I have taken a few projects from Australia back to India for coding, and these are the key things: processes, tools, documentation, contracts, and planning. So what I have done is I have replaced the word over by together with, and then of course I have got professional indemnity insurance after that, because I don't know what's going to happen. But my view, composite CAMS view, is that we need individuals and interactions together with processes and tools. And around the psychology of Agile says that if we have the word over, we will use this and abuse this. And then you look at the Agile practices, then the formal life cycle, then something like PMBOK and Prince2 over here, and then something even more formal like ITIL and COBIT, and formal, very, very formal, even Six Sigma, business process optimization. So that is really the crux. There is one more slide. Okay, so this is the balancing act, management and leadership. I want to show you this, and then I'll cover the remaining. So what we did in the research that went through for almost 2 years. So this is our main life cycle, and we don't want to give up that life cycle for the reasons that I very briefly mentioned, like compliance requirement, like budgeting, and so on. Then we started introducing iterations. That is the keyword. We're starting for Agile. But these three iterations can be also very, very formal. So we have increments within them, and the iterations within the increments have the opportunity to apply these all 13 Agile techniques. And so this is where my Agile practices play a role. And people like this because I talk to say a PMO, project management office, a senior person, and he says, I'm worried, Bhuvan, with this Agile. And I say, okay, let's have a chat. And I explain to him the view we are taking on Agile. It has actually happened somewhere in June, July, just before I came here in August. And this was a convincing slide. And this has come out of a fair bit of work, mostly action research driven research. and some interviews. So if we look at this planned and agile method and look at all successful projects, and I'm sure there are people in this room who have led successful projects, with or without agile, in our mind we have a mental slider like this, and we keep sliding it depending on how the project is going. If we have to make a board presentation, then this slider moves to the left. When we have 3 people sitting in a room and trying to hack out some Java or Python or mobile app, the slider moves to the right. And it needs to, you are smiling over there, so you can feel that this relates somehow to you. So that's the way it is, and then we unfold our CAMS. And this is again a pictorial representation. I need more time to explain, but you can see Scrum, rational unified process for developing software, a very practical picture. Prince2 as a project management method, COBIT for ITIL slash COBIT I should say, and then business processes, and then each of this becomes a iteration, and that becomes fairly involved. This is how it looks when you have all these methods on the left, and then we have opened them up. So Prince2, this is Prince2 phases. You can replace this with PMBOK. And this line in between them is the area of method friction. And unless we handle method friction, what happens is these methods or processes or frameworks are for a key role in an organization. If I am a project manager, I want Prince2. If I am a developer, I want Scrum. If I am a business person, I want Six Sigma, fully optimized. If I am a operations manager, I want ITIL or COBIT. And each of these have tension against each other. And all the literature that I have reviewed and come across, there is no research done on how multiple methods work together in practice. So avoiding method friction is the direction in which I am going, and Composite Agile has embedded avoiding method friction already. Another keyword that you will have come across in the Agile literature is DevOps. Now what is DevOps? And again I am highlighting it very briefly. The more development of software became successful, the more other parts of the organization started facing challenges. And operations is one division that face challenges, because you are developing releases so fast, but there is no mechanism to operationalize them. It's like somehow the cars in an engine, behind an engine, have suddenly started moving faster, but the engine which is going to take the train ahead is slow, and then you're going to have an accident, and it has happened. So sometimes success is not a good idea. Oh, that's very philosophical. So unless you operationalize, unless your operations become agile is not successful. And here you need something beyond stories and standards and so on. So that's DevOps. And last thought before I show you something from my practical work. This is all some really excellent material. I call it myself excellent because I thoroughly enjoyed it in the psychology of Agile. I presented this on 10th or 11th of May last year in New York in a conference on data science. And out of the audience, at the end of this presentation, this is left brain, right brain stuff. So left brain, right hand is PMBOK. And right brain, left hand is Agile. And who is it? The Nobel laureate. He's done. I have somewhere acknowledged him also. So he has done this work, Roberts, somebody, on left and right brain. And at the end of my presentation, there were 6 people from the audience who came and started chatting with me. And a newspaper reporter came and said, "I want to take a picture. Something interesting is happening here," because all 6 were ladies. And he said, "So what's happening here?" Well, I was emphasizing right brain, left hand, which is the feminine part in a human body. One more time I will come here and talk about that. And what I did is I put Abraham Maslow's hierarchy on the side, and you can see that physiological and safety needs are more towards PMBOK and Prince2, whereas self-actualization and esteem needs are satisfied by Agile. So no wonder Agile is so popular. There is something of immense value there, but we need to balance the two. By the way, I came across a cartoon which had a sixth layer, and it said, "That's Wi-Fi." So this is how we developed Rabobank's Agile framework, RAF. Yes, it looks complex, so there's no need to even make an attempt to read this. I'll give you a full A1 size poster. We spend $100 to print it and use it in practice. But this is not my framework, but that of my client. And I coach them, and we sat together and we developed a framework. And these are their values: collaboration, trust, fail fast. Fail fast is a positive value that a group of people over multiple meetings develop. What is happening is we are developing this wonderful solution which fails at the end. How about we try and develop the solution but make it fail faster? Then at least we have an opportunity to fix it. Then there is this layer of iteration. These are their roles. These are the deliverables in Composite Agile. We don't give up on deliverables. These are conditions. These are Agile practices. These are examples. And these are the names of the people. I put their names in. You are the one who have developed this. And in fact, yesterday or day before, I was on Skype with them, and they are saying, it's going great. We did retrospective, what worked, what did not work, what things we need to change. Every 6 to 8 weeks, we were doing a retrospective. And that was a very, very big thing. And it's not just this, there are a lot more. And we were doing bar charts of comparison before RAF introduction, after the first iteration, after the second, and so on. So that's what I wanted to share with all of you. As you can see, I am quite charged up and excited about Agile. But my take on Agile is really a balanced approach, a composite approach, and we have done a fair bit of action research around this and interviews to see that really people feel, unless it is balanced, pure Agile may be good for superheroes in San Francisco sitting in a garage and writing Facebook or the next billion-dollar company. But for someone like me who is dealing with Westpac and Rabobank and Qantas and AMP and then Maxis in Malaysia and so on, that super Agile doesn't work. So on the other hand, I don't want to give up Agile at all. I love the value of Agile. So it's a balancing act. And to teach that to my students is a greater joy now, because I have to bring them into this Agile era, and that is something I am enjoying doing. So this is what I would say is the conclusion of my talk. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
One thing you mentioned, the DevOps, and I had never heard of that term. It's very interesting. So, for example, an SAP implementation at an organization, a lot of that is fitting their operations to the way the software was designed, and that's a greater challenge than the implementation of the software and make that run. So that's where.
Because what is happening, once in a while, in fact more than once in a while, a CIO flying business class reads a glossy magazine related to business and IT and comes home and says, we are going Agile. And I have heard it will save me so much percentage. I've got this budget and you're the great guy over there, and I'm giving you this budget and you're responsible and make us Agile. And so a honest guy, a honest Bhuvan takes the money and tries to make the organization agile. So the developers are agile, the BAs are agile. You know, we briefly talked about, you mentioned, Michael, about BAs being product owners, which is fantastic. That's exactly how I have mapped the BA role in agile, product owner. They are dealing with the